What was the biggest bullet you dodged? A few years ago I had pneumonia, but my whole family insisted that it was just post-nasal drip, which runs in the family. After a week or two I woke up in the middle of the night when I couldn't feel my arm. After I got to the ER, the doctor said that it was the worst he'd ever seen and he was surprised I wasn't dead. I had 3 pounds of mucus cut out of my lungs and another 2 weeks in the hospital siphoning out the rest. For 3 months afterwards I could barely walk half a mile without starting to pass out, and I still can't run for more than 200 to 300 yards without collapsing. Have you looked into respiratory therapy to try to build yourself back up to running? I'm sorry you've had to deal with this. My dad was a truck driver in the oil field in Canada. He worked a lot of long hours and every single day. So on weekends he would bring me and my younger brother on some of his jobs. We were on location and my little brother, 3 years, and me, 10 years, were waiting for him playing in cab of truck. My little brother opened the passenger door and my little arms closed it. Job's done, we start our trek home going about 35 kilometers per hour. And the door flies open and I get sucked out of truck. I remember doing about 10 backflips as I tumbled out, hitting the ground on my back a few times and rolling my way to a stop. I stood up before the truck was even stopped in absolute shock. Next thing I see my dad looking for me and he burst into tears. First time I ever seen him cry. I'm 33 now and he still won't talk to me about it. Luckily the rig was in a farmer's field. So when we were leaving I landed on softer dirt. Not a single scratch on me. Dad thought he ran over me with trailer. Don't think we ever went to work with Dad again. I work for the company now. I fell out of a farm truck when I was about 8, going about 35 down a just out of town stretch of highway. I bounced a few times and came to a stop just about to the shoulder of the road. I remember overwhelming certainty that I was going to die, and I rolled to the ditch. Missed getting run over by about 10 inches. Got up, my mom had come back for me and immediately took me to the ER where I was given a total clean bill of health. Not a bump, though I did have a nasty bruise where I hit the road initially. Who knew kids were made of rubber? Many years ago, my flight had just landed at Chicago O'Hare and the plane was taxiing when the pilot suddenly slammed on the brakes. People were literally thrown forward against the seat in front of them. A few seconds later, another plane, taking off I think, went screaming by right in front of us. No explanation was given, though our imaginations provided a lot of gory details. Just regular Chicago drivers. It's do or die on the Dan Ryan. So did y'all get some extra frequent flyer miles or anything? I think they got concussions. As a kid, after running errands in town with my mom, I was climbing into the backseat of our family station wagon. A semi-truck hit a power line pole down the street, causing the still live wire to fall, bounce off the roof of the car and hang across the open door just a foot or two above my legs. Raised Catholic, I wondered for a while after if I had actually died that day and that the rest of what I thought was my life was my purgatory. Poor you as a kid. I often had a particular nightmare about the apocalypse and doomsday when I was little because the church talked about the end of days and the second coming of God. I had an aunt who would make us watch movies about such topics. I sometimes still have that dream, always the same dream since I was little. Not changing jobs in early 2020. Would have been a short-lived promotion after early restructuring and layoffs. I changed jobs March 9, 2020. 2 days later my city shut down and everyone was sent to work from home. My new company committed to zero COVID layoffs. The company I left, lay off about 80% of my department. Dodged a bullet, haha. Same thing, mine committed to zero COVID layoffs. Apparently restructuring layoffs were fair game though. Restructuring not at all COVID-related QI role. Changed jobs in early 2019. Currently laid off. Whoops. Got a new job in 2019, very lucky that it's at a hospital. A friend had lost his job under suspicious circumstances. A few weeks later he asked me to take him to the bank. As I got near to pick him up I caught a train. He called to say never mind, he would get someone else. A few days later a friend sent out a message to a large number of our friends. This guy lost his job and was running a check cashing con. Can you cash this check for me? I'll pay you $50 if you do. The check is $500, he has no backing funds, you eat the whole amount. He did this to several friends in a few days to amass a few grand and was about to skip town when the cops got him. Halfway through this I was thinking you dodged being an unknown getaway driver for a bank robbery. Same here, was slightly disappointed. I had this scumbag boyfriend when I was about 15 who wanted to try the same thing. He said a mysterious friend of his told him how to do it, and could we get my dad's checkbook? Obviously I figured out the money would come out of my dad's account, so I said no. After I had a stroke, I was in a coma and it didn't look like I'd wake up. The doctors asked my wife if they should let me go. I only exist because she said no. I didn't dodge a bullet so much as my wife blocked it for me. Edit. I didn't think this would be this popular. I'm posting a video my wife made of the first year of recovery if anyone's interested. Warning, it's long. Web link. Honestly, this made me tear up a lil. Please tell your wife that she's incredible. My aunt did something similar. She saved her husband from a heart attack by using her nursing experience and network to get him on the table before it even started. To this day, even doctors have no idea what caused his heart attack, but my aunt and your wife are legit superheroes. Not me, but I had a field service engineer working on one of my big robotic liquid handlers. He decided to bypass the safety pin that prevents the heads from moving while the cover is open while he had a diagnostic program queued up on the computer. What he didn't know was that the instant he reinserted the safety pin, the machine would execute the queued instructions and start moving, and he had a hand inside it right in the danger zone. I grabbed his shoulder and yanked his hand out an instant before it was crushed. He stopped ignoring me when I told him to stop bypassing safety lockouts to save a few minutes. Wow. I'm sure this guy isn't completely responsible for you guys putting a safety system in place, but it sounds like he certainly had a hand in it. And this, kids, is why Lodo is so damn important. But why is it not coded to need a restart when the pin is reinstalled instead of just starting back up immediately? This particular machine was made by 90s-era Samsung, designed perfectly along watchable principles. All proprietary interfaces, custom computer boards to output analog signal directly from the PC to the motors, nothing was standardized. The motors were Samsung generic purpose electrics and way overpowered. Everything about this thing was weird by modern standards. Newer instruments just connect to a PC by a single USB cord or just have a built-in PC and touchscreen interface. My newborn needed to be rushed to a super high-level NICU to be put into a state of induced hypothermia, because he only had hours before he would suffer permanent brain damage. I live in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The small town next door just barely upgraded their hospital to have that hypothermia suite, one of only a few in Texas. He's doing great, no sign of any damage. Our daughter is a NICU baby too. The only piece of unsolicited advice I will ever give expecting parents is when you're checking out hospitals, make sure to check out the NICU and select a hospital with a good one. You probably won't need it, but if you do, you'll be happy it's there. Daughter is 4 now and a healthy little spitfire. Glad your son is too. I stayed up all night before a day trip to Hong Kong. You know that days when you haven't slept, you're just kind of robotic and doing the human stuff. Nearly zero awareness of anything? Well, I went across the street and my friend behind me snatched my shoulder and yanked me backwards just in time to feel the whoosh of a double-decker bus breezing past us. I just looked at him like, oh, thanks man, and it took a whole extra minute for my brain to process I would be effing dead had he not grabbed me. I think I saved a baby's life once. It was in a city center, crossing a main road with a whole bunch of other people. The dad was pulling the pram behind him onto the pavement while he texted on his phone, and the dumb F didn't realize he'd left the pram just there on the road while he himself was on the pavement. Everyone kind of ignored it while the traffic lights kept that section of road clear, but then the lights changed and the effing moron still hadn't looked up from his phone while a huge double-decker was bearing down on his offspring. Out of the whole crowd, I was the only one to push forward and pull the pram onto the pavement. The complete imbecile gave a grunt of surprise and dropped his phone as the bus whooshed past, and he realized he'd utterly failed in his parenting responsibilities, which was some consolation. I hope it shattered. Thanks y'all for the praise. I don't feel good about the situation though, just seething fury. And to those who told me I should have let the baby die, Go eat a takeaway bag of crap on your way to a therapist. About why the bus driver didn't stop, I honestly have no idea. There were a few seconds between me pulling the pram back and my memory of the bus going by. Maybe he realized it would be fine. Or maybe he was driving automatically and hadn't noticed. Whatever, I'm just glad I didn't have to see a baby die painfully that day. Forget the phone shattering, I'd hope he reflects on that moment often. I lost my favorite phone that day. That's why my next kid will be named Gorilla Glass. Hubs, my sister, and I were hanging out around my parents' house on a very boring 4th of July. We decided to wash my husband's new car sitting in the driveway because it was hot out and an excuse to play in the hose. We were literally walking out the front door, and I said, "Hey, we should eat lunch before we get all wet and stuff," and everyone agreed, so we turned around and went back inside. I was warming up something in the microwave, a Hot Pocket I think, and all of a sudden I hear the loudest bang I think I've ever heard, from the direction of the front door. Hubs and I look at each other wide-eyed and run outside. I was greeted by the back end of a Crown Vic, smoking something fierce, plowed into the tree in the middle of our yard. For a split second I was just stunned, then screamed to my sister inside to call 911. I looked over to the driveway, at the car we had been planning to wash just 5 minutes ago. Totaled. Completely totaled. Brand new 2011 G6, destroyed. Guy hit it so hard it did a complete 90-degree turn across the driveway. He actually hit it so hard, it ended up ricocheting and hitting the other cars in the driveway, mauling 2 other cars. Yard was effed, Crown Vic was effed, tree was effed. We immediately assumed it was drunk driving, being the 4th and all. I went over to the driver's side and found a very old man, very bewildered, unable to comprehend what I was saying but conscious. I will never forget the look he gave me, confused, helpless, and scared. I was on the line with the paramedics as they sent over the ambulances, and tried my best to follow their instructions. My sister was only 14 at the time, so I handled the call. Turns out dude was diabetic and had passed out behind the wheel due to low blood sugar, hit the gas pedal with his weight as he passed out, and was plowing down our residential street at about 65 miles per hour. He jumped the curb, drove down the sidewalk past another house, then slammed into my husband's car, and subsequently, the tree. If we had been anywhere near that yard/driveway, I have no doubt one or all of us would have been seriously injured or dead. It was sheer dumb luck and timing that saved us. Huge bullet dodged, or should I say, huge car dodged. I will never judge myself for craving Hot Pockets again. One day, they just might save my life. Was going to move to a different apartment complex last month, got injured at work and lost hours, therefore, couldn't come up with the deposit money in time. Last week some asshat was cooking meth and caught the building on fire. Edit, my username. My current apartment complex is notorious in my city for having elevator troubles, so in reality, username does check out. Also, you could say I dodged 2 bullets. 1, the fire. 2, I know bad stuff happens everywhere blah blah blah, but the new place really didn't strike me as the kind of place where meth heads live. So I guess avoiding those kind of people for neighbors was dodging a bullet in itself. My mother left me in one state and went back to my abusive stepfather. She tried to get me to drop out of my senior year at high school, move back to their state and just get my GED. They wanted a live-in babysitter, cook and maid. I was so lucky my grandparents let me move in with them and finish school. Edit, thanks for all the love guys. For those who have asked, I'm doing great. I've gone no contact with my mother and stepfather, they're still together, and it's been one of the most healthy decisions I've made. My husband and my kids are amazing and she's missing out big time. My grandparents are alive and well and are still involved in our lives. It's always the grandparents that are the true homies. Grandparents have the grim misfortune of seeing their children become complete buttholes, and then treat their grandkids the way they wish they treated their kids. Raise your child, spoil your grandkids. Spoil your child, raise your grandkids, or however that saying goes. Probably isn't true that often. Does seem a bit of a blanket statement, but I acknowledge and respect the sentiment. Literally. I was walking back to our barracks in Afghanistan talking with my peers and my staff sergeant. We get to on part, my staff sergeant grabbed my collar and pulled me back. Right, there was an unexploded 40mm grenade projectile from a launcher sitting where my foot was about to land. Big yikes. Staff Sergeant was immediately moved to the Grenadier Guards. So the biggest bullet you dodged was 40mm. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.